in which we created.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Um, I've been with TCiNN for about 5 months, and I'm in a 6 month internship. So this is actually the start of my very last month here. I end on the 21st next month. So kind of sad to leave, but I'm really thankful for the staff and the opportunities that they've let me have here. So I'm very excited to do my first webinar with them as well. And yeah, education-wise, I have my science associate and I'm working towards my environmental science bachelor's degree after my internship. So with that being said, we can dive right into the agenda. So the focus today is to focus on making your schoolyard greener and in a simplistic way that doesn't seem too daunting. I know schools are facing a lot of stress right now and there's a lot of moving parts. So this is just an intro to feel more confident in trying to make a good change for your school and for your kids and you. So how we're going to do for our agenda today is we're going to do research and health benefits. So we're just going to talk about why it's important to have a greener schoolyard and especially with native trees. And then your guys' impact with conservation and reforestation. And then we're going to do more about the, I guess, steps. So plan easy, care simplified, and source smart. So more of our logistical stuff of how to get started. So with that being said, let's get right into research and benefits. So there's so many good benefits from having trees in your schoolyard and just being in nature in general, especially for children. It's so beneficial for them. So before discussing our strategies, it is good to understand why schoolyards or greener schoolyards matter for the research and child development perspective. So Texas Children in Nature Network compiles a large body of research showing that children who regularly engage with natural environments are often physically and mentally healthier. So that is going to support the focus, their mood, and stress regulation. Studies have even identified associations between children green space exposure and reduced risk of certain health disorders later in life, specifically physical and mental health disorders. So having native trees and a greener schoolyard is going to affect your kids in the current time, in your classroom time, and in their overall health as they get older. It also encourages movement and play, especially for young ones. It's going to help build up their motor skills, climbing, exploring, and also having imaginative play outside. And having more trees and more natural structures is going to increase their want to be outside and explore and just get more active, which I feel like a lot of our kids are going to need that right now, getting off their electronics and getting outside and exploring and having fun. And we need to have environments that are going to support that want for them. A big thing that I thought was really cool that Beth mentioned to add in this webinar was how it strengthens the microbiome. And I was looking into this, and I feel like it's very interesting. There's a lot of different studies that I've been seeing coming out recently, but contact with biodiverse outdoor environments introduces children to greater microbial diversity, which is associated with immune regulation and broader physiological processes. So these broader processes include reduction in inflammatory related diseases, and then lower allergen sensitivity. And as pollen gets worse every single year, I think that's a really big one to have our kids outside so they adapt to the pollen that's getting more and more increasingly present for us as adults that we're always facing on a yearly basis here. And then also something that I thought was really interesting too was it also affects their digestive system. So they have a better digestive system as they get older, due to having that diverse like microbiome when they're younger and playing in the soil and getting associated with all these different good systems that are already in our world. So yeah, very cool when it comes to microbiome. I thought that was actually one of my favorite things that I was researching about it. And then something that I feel like a lot of us know already, but having native trees and nature in your schoolyard is also going to help improve local air quality and your overall health. So it's going to take in pollutants. It's also going to help with like not having flooding in your schoolyard and your heat issues. So a lot of your environmental issues that you're facing in your schoolyard can be solved with just having some native trees. And especially industrialized areas, it's so important to have something that's going to be taking in those pollutants and to be making a better place for your community, your kids, and yourself when you're in your school area. All right. So those are our research and health benefits. Now, our next slide is going to be conservation and reforestation. So I don't think a lot of times schools are thinking about putting trees in their schoolyard and how it's actually going to contribute to this. But it's one of the things that your schoolyard represents some of the most significant green spaces within your community. So you guys have a lot of land and a lot of schools don't have a lot of trees on it. And you guys are in areas that are around neighborhoods or in areas that, like I said, are industrialized. We don't have, if you're in Texas, we don't have a lot of zoning laws. So you can be right next to a plant and your school is right by it. So your school is at the forefront of really helping environmental impacts with your community. And it can help with environmental resilience. So planting native trees and vegetation supports biodiversity. It creates habitats and it helps expand your urban canopy in your area. Again, it's also going to help with pollution in your area. So not only is it going to help your teachers, your staff, your kids, it's going to also help the people that are in that area as well, planting more trees. And then it's also going to help steward um, relationship with plants for kids. So kids that are not like coming into contact with a lot of, I guess, plants in their area. They're in a very concrete kind of jungle. Like in Houston, we call it like a concrete jungle. There's so much concrete. We don't have like a lot of access to nature in some of these areas. And having these trees in your schoolyard is going to help kids have better connection with wanting to steward these environmental efforts in the future. So they're going to help shape their conservation values, empathy towards each other, empathy towards the planet, and wanting to make sure that everything is, working the way that it should and actually taking accountability as a person and trying to make the world a better place by bringing in their values and their connections with nature into wherever they go in life. So it's very important to have these kids foster these relationships young so they bring it with them when they get older and they go into conservation fields such as I. So that was kind of my experience. I had a lot of nature when I was younger and I ended up wanting to go into conservation fields. So I am definitely the product of how that works. So a little bit about that. That's all I have to say about it. And then this is our first exercise. So I thought this would be a fun way to get into some of the more logistical steps. So this is called Shade Detective. So if you have a campus, or if you don't have a campus, it's okay, but you can kind of imagine where this would be. I want you to think about that campus and where is the most uncomfortable sunny spot for students. So if you were a teacher, like where is an area that you avoid, or staff, that you avoid going outside in your area because it's too hot, there's too much runnage, there's a lot of water there, so you don't want to step in it when you come to school, you try to avoid it, make your kids avoid it. So what are some areas that you're seeing in your school that people are avoiding for some kind of environmental factor, either sun or water?
If you want us to answer it,
Yes.
I'm home base, and my neighbors on both sides of me used to have trees, and we used to get like some of their shades in the corner of my backyard that my tree didn't hit, but one of the freeze destroyed one tree, and then I think they got their foundation fixed on the other side, so they canceled that tree out. So we don't have that shade. And the one tree I have in my backyard, I kind of want to exit out because I want to possibly plant a new tree, but not as close to my house so I can kind of combat my own foundation issues. Yeah.
Mm. No, that's a good point. Yeah. I feel like you can also see it in your neighborhoods and your areas and your areas where you live, just areas that need more trees or a fix like environmentally. So that's a good point. Thanks for sharing that. I'll give it like one more minute and then we'll move to our next slide. All right. Okay. Well, I will let you guys think about that for a little bit, but I'll go ahead and move
Yeah.
over.
Cynthia threw her comments in the chat. She says the campus I am familiar with is the Hubbard Public Library grounds. There's a sensory garden, and shade was added to make this beautiful garden more accessible and protected during hot summer days. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
we're
that's perfect.
seeing more libraries doing
Yeah, yeah, that's a
outdoor
good
spaces.
example. Yeah. And just like having that just makes it so much accessible, more accessible for people to actually want to go outside just by adding a few trees. Like you don't even need to do that much. One tree is sometimes even enough if you're wanting to start small. So that's a good point. All right. Thank you for that. Okay, let's go into our next slide. With that being said, and just keeping some of those observations in mind, this is going to be kind of the planning part. So I wanted this to be not too daunting, and planning does not need to be like doing everything at once. It's just kind of more of observing. So I kind of put it into a three-step system. So the very first thing, if you're having a schoolyard or wherever you're at, say a library, your community area, you're going to want to observe the site that you think needs some kind of alteration that you've seen a problem in. So you might want to conduct a brief campus walk for 15, 20 minutes, or if you know exact area, you could just go right over there and just start observing it already. You don't have to do the whole walk around. But if you haven't figured out an area, but you know there's an issue, you can do the full thing. And when you're on this site observation little walk, you want to just note where is there heat, where is there shade, and then again, where are the water patterns? So is there water pooling somewhere? Is there runoff? Is a place just overly muddy? So just kind of taking into account like what's going on the landscape and just like noting it in your head or you note it in your phone's app. You do not need to like take your little notepad and write it down. You can, but you don't have to make it too complicated. And then when you are on this walk, you can also do this assessment, or you could do it a different day. Either way, you can take it as slow as you want. I know that each day comes with its own busy schedule, so you can do these on two opposite times. It's totally fine. But if you're feeling like you want to do it all together, it'll take it in one go. So when you're on that walk, or say you want to do this on a different day, you're going to want to assess environmental and logistical conditions. So one of the biggest things that you want to think about before you plant anything is where is your water source? Because you are going to have to bring this water source to this area for about 2 to 3 years for care whenever you first plant a native plant. So you want to think about, do you guys have an outdoor water faucet? Is there a hose that you can go over to that area? Is there already an irrigation system? Do you guys have sprinklers? So just kind of noting down like where is the water source going to come from in the area that you want to put this plant. And even with native trees, it's going to be like 2 to 3 years of care, and they're usually fine afterwards, but they're still going to need consistent watering, especially during that time. Then you're also going to want to identify your proximity to structures, electrical lines, and pipes. Now, stuff that are underground, I'll get into that in a second because you guys don't actually need to do that. There's some great resources that you can have people do that for you, which is even better. But for structures and electrical, I mean, you can just kind of note like, is the area that you're in surrounded by buildings? Do you want to put a tree right by a building? And just kind of note where the problem areas are and which ones you can put something by and which ones might be a little too close to maybe a sidewalk or a building or electrical lines or whatever is going on, or maybe the school like already built playground. So if you are not wanting to dig and figure out what's going on underground, which I'm pretty sure no one wants to do, you can also call 811. It's called 811beforeyoudig.com. You can also go through that. And this is a national free service, and they will help mark underground utility lines before planting. So like they will tell you if you cannot plant something there, and you do not need to go and figure this all out on yourself. So it takes some of the stress off. You just gotta, I believe it's like a form that you put in online or you call them. So then they can just kind of look in your area and make sure that you're not gonna be hitting anything that's important, especially you don't wanna be touching anything that's, on like government, stuff that like pipes for the community and stuff. You wanna make sure that you're avoiding that. So that is a great service, completely free, and you don't have to do it yourself. So even better. And then lastly, again, you wanna make sure that you're focusing on areas that have impact. So not just areas that are going to look pretty, but areas that are going to really impact your students or your community. So making sure that wherever you're planting it, there's a problem that can be solved there. And it's not just planning to just plant a tree. So making sure that either there's too much light, there's too much water there, or just the lack of trees. but making sure that it's going to have an impact for the effort that you're putting in because you're still going to have to care for this tree and you need to have a reason of why you're doing it. So it's a little bit more community based and you have some structure of why this is important and why you've taken up this time out of your day to do all this. So yes. And then for planning, to be honest, to do all of this, it should only take about 30, 45 minutes. It should not take too long. You do not need to make the planning process of this part very much longer than that. It's not going to take too much out of your day and you don't want it to, otherwise you'll never get started. So you want your planning to be easy and accessible for you so you don't have to, you know, you're going to be more likely to actually want to do this instead of just be like, that's too hard, you know? So 30, 45 minutes, doable. That's why I think it's a good entry level. So once you get into your planning, you kind of have an idea of where you want the tree. Then we're going to talk about plant selection. So I think plant selection for a lot of people that don't have gardening experience, like me, is kind of daunting if you don't really understand where to go or like what to choose or anything about these things that I'm going to talk about. So I'm just going to go over the basics and just hope you guys feel a little bit more confident when you're picking a tree. It's really not as hard as it seems. You don't really need that much gardening experience. And actually, Beth has a great little document that TCiNN has put out, and it's a native trees that are good for kids. So basically, ones that are non-toxic, they're not going to harm the kids, and they're native trees for the Texas area. So they are a great choice selection that you can look at and choose some stuff that are going to be good for your schoolyard just off of that. But with that said, just to go over the basics, some of the things that you want to think about is soil compatibility. So there's a lot of different types of soil. We have sandy soil, we have clay soil, we have some loomy soil. All of them absorb water differently, or all of them have different aeration. And you don't have to know too much about it. To be honest, you can do a quick Google search of your area and figure out what soil you're in. You do not need to do soil testing. If you want to, you can make it a classroom experience. If you don't want to, there's a lot of good resources that you can just look up the soil in your area and figure out what kind of soil you're on. And then for tree size, you want to think about your mature tree and not the tiny trees. So when you're looking at trees and looking at what kind of tree you're going to plant outside of figuring out what soil is compatible, then you want to think of how big it's going to grow so it doesn't, again, hit structures or power lines or the roots go too deep into the ground. So just keep in mind of what the mature tree is going to look like and not just what the baby tree is going to be. And then if you really want to get good at conservation and also less maintenance over time, understory support is recommended. Yes.
You said you don't want the roots to go too deep into the ground. Why is that?
So depending on your area, so if roots go deep, it's good to have a structured root, but sometimes it's just depending on if there's areas of interest of you don't want to hit certain lines. You can plant some trees over some things that are deeper down, but you have to just make sure that you're understanding the level of how deep the roots are going to grow when it comes to maybe hitting something that you don't want to. I mean, personally, you can just avoid it in general by just not planting over those areas, but sometimes you just don't want it to go down as deep into the ground. Just to make sure that you're not messing with anything in the system. So if you have say a native plant that's not going to have as deep root systems, which most native plants do, you can kind of work around those areas. As for understory plants, those ones would be great for protecting roots and stuff as well. So protecting roots and your soil health, they're going to lead to less maintenance over time. And they're especially great if you want to add some educational properties. There's some great Texas plants, and they're going to be probably listed in the guide that Beth sends out, which are going to be beauty berries, or I believe there's the Turkish, what are they called again? Turkish red cap, I believe. I'm gonna have to, yes, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. But there's some native plants that are budding berries that kids can eat that are educational resources that will also protect your tree over time. So understory support would be amazing to have if you have the extra time to do that. And then resilience and durability. So you want to make sure that you choose something that's going to be able to fight against whatever is happening in your area. So say you're in Houston, you want a tree that's going to be able to withstand flooding. We have a ton of flooding here, and native trees are great because they will absorb water, but you want to make sure that you're choosing the right kinds still. So just thinking about durability, how long they're going to last. Also, some trees will die faster than others. So think about how long they're going to stay alive for. Some of them don't last 20, 30 years. Some of them only last 10 to 15 years, depending on what kind of tree it is. So you want to make sure that you're picking a tree that's going to last a long time and not start, decaying over it, like, after it just matures. I believe that I think it's one of the willows trees in Texas has a really big issue. When you plant it, it decays really fast. So definitely want to just make sure oaks are always a really good one to put into the ground because they last a long time and they have good stability. And then maintenance and practicality. So make sure that you're picking a tree that's not going to be too crazy to maintenance. Some trees take longer to mature. So maybe picking a tree that is a mid-ground of maturing so you don't have to baby it for too long. So just make sure that when it comes to maintenance and practicality that you're just picking a tree that's easier. One of the resources that I'll have at the end on top of our TCiNN stuff, there's this website called Gardenia, and it talks about a little bit about all of these factors. It'll tell you soil, it'll tell you mature size, it will tell you about the resilience and its ability to adapt to climate. And it will also tell you about just like what your maintenance is going to look like. So it's a great resource. All right. And then for Care Simplified, so this is just a basic rundown of tree care. So for our native trees, they really don't need too much care after the first 2-3 years, but still you're going to have that early stage. So this is just a brief rundown of how to take care of your tree in an early stage. So the very first thing that you want to think about is how do you plant your tree, right? So I'm just going to go a brief description of this. Planting your tree, you just want to make sure it's about 2 to 3 feet difference from the actual base of the tree. So when you get your tree and it's going to be like in a giant like little container, you just don't want to make that hole too much bigger than that container. And you want to dig up in native soil, of course, in the right soil area. And then when you plant it, just make sure that you're not covering the roots that are really close to the trunk. The roots that are close to the trunk need to stay a little bit above the soil. So just make sure that you have a little bit of lump root when you plant it. And then when you plant it, you just want to make sure that you cover it again with that native soil and don't put other planting soil in it because it prefers the native soil that you're planting it in since it is for the area that you chose. So planting isn't too difficult. And if you're only planting 1, 2, 3 trees at a time or some understory with them, it's not going to take a huge amount of time. You can probably get it done in one day, a planting day. So like you can make it a whole school event or a community event. So it shouldn't take too much time every day just to get the planting done. Now, deep watering will be the thing that's going to be your more heavy maintenance over time. And we'll talk about scheduling and having it written into the system of like the school. So when you're watering, it's, not just you doing it, it has a system. So when people are leaving and coming from the school, it will continue to get the proper care. So real quick about deep watering, if you did not know, because I did not know this before before learning about it when I was doing this webinar, is there is something called the drip line. So deep watering is not just watering a lot, it is watering slowly in a specific area so the tree can absorb it properly. And so the roots can grow deeper into the ground and the proper areas so it can withstand climate. So say we have hurricanes here or tornadoes, you want something that's going to have a good firm foundation so it's not going to get ripped up from the ground. So deep watering is going to be where you have either a sprinkler or a hose running at a low level for about an hour. Hopefully in the morning would be the preferred time. And you want to put it a little bit further away from the tree so you can kind of see the drip line here. And you want to make sure it's going to be at the roots that are almost at the top of the soil so they can really absorb that water and bring it to the areas that it needs to be in the tree. And then proper mulching. This one is also kind of with planting, but just a little brief thing. Once you get the tree in the ground, before you start watering it, you do want to make sure that you're not doing this thing called a tree volcano, which is when you pile all the dirt up all the way at the base of the tree and you call it a day. We do not want to do that. We want to make a little bit of a donut. So there is this rule called the 3-3-3 rule for planting trees. And you have 3 inches deep of mulch, 3 inches from the base of the tree, and then 3 feet in diameter. So no mulch right on the tree. You want to have it 3 inches from the base. That is very important. And then having a good diameter of mulch around it. So yeah, just like a little bit of a donut is how I like to think about it. And then lastly, for establishment, periodic monitoring. Now, you don't need a lot of knowledge about knowing tree health or anything about that. It's really just noticing, like, does the tree look like it's dying? So going out and just being like, are the leaves falling at not the right time? It's not winter time where all the leaves coming off of it, you know? Or is the tree leaning at the early stage? Is it not growing up straight? Does the bark look a little odd? Is it peeling? Are there bites all over the tree? Like, is there maybe like an infestation of like some kind of bug or virus on it? So just like trees are pretty observable when they're sick. Same thing as human. You can kind of tell when a human's sick. I feel like a lot of times we take it's kind of the same thing for trees. It's not going to be too difficult for you to tell that a tree's not doing well. It will definitely give you a lot of signs. They can be a little dramatic sometimes. So it's it's just one of those things that you just want to take into account, just checking on it. And again, it would be great for a classroom activity. So if you're planning this in a schoolyard, make it a thing where you go and check on the tree with your students and talk to them about tree health and make it into a lesson. So the best systems for having native trees in schoolyards is actually making it into your science curriculum and really talking about the benefits of trees and how it's going to, and how like kids can learn about gardening themselves and understanding just um, yeah, earth science as well. So sustainable care in school environments is the last thing on the care system. And it's mainly just focusing on shared responsibility. Again, with schools or even in the community, people rotate out all the time. You're not always going to have the same people there. People leave, people come in, especially students. They get older, they move into a different part of school. So you want to have a rotating system of who's going to be taking care of this tree. You can't just plant it and leave it. That's not going to be the best conditions for it. So make sure that you have a system and also it documented so you know when someone's done something for the tree. So you would make a list or some kind of online form that you guys can fill out and send within each other or the school system. And then also make it part of rotating classes on who's going to check the tree, who's making sure that it's been watered, and just having it as a whole care system all together. So you guys can learn together as students and teachers on how to properly care for the tree. And they can also feel like, again, they're getting part of the conservation efforts at their school and bettering their community. So it's a great time for kids to get involved in this kind of stuff. It's not just for teachers to plant, it's also a great learning opportunity. So I would definitely recommend that for the best care and longevity of native trees. Even though they will do fine after a few years, you still need that babying period. All right, and then let's get over here. This is our last slide. So this is just kind of simple, but I think we all know that you're going to have to find a place to get these trees. And you're going to either have money to get the trees or you will have to find something that's giving away the trees. So just a brief talk about this. And then I'll talk about opportunity that Beth will be sending out in her thank you email afterwards. But for sources, we have local nurseries and providers are great. Even better are free trees. So there's a lot of tree giveaways and distribution programs. In the Houston area, I've actually been doing some tree giveaways. Currently, the Student Conservation Association has been partnering with some different organizations and they do tree giveaways for different communities. So we have just recently done a few in Channelview. So you can usually find tree giveaways or distribution programs with just a simple search, but yeah, you can definitely check out SCA and just like see if they have any ones in your areas because a lot of times they'll partner, and Forest Trees Houston, great place as well. So there's a lot of different places to get some free native trees that are also fruiting. So you guys have some fruit in your schoolyard as well. And then another way to get trees or funding is build partnerships. So if you have community organizations or corporate neighbors, whatever is going on, so you have like Shell or PNC or some of these bigger organizations, you can always contact them and ask if they're willing to sponsor it and just state your case for your schoolyard or your community. And a lot of times that they do have a lot of opportunities or they already have initiatives that they are doing in other communities and they're willing to help out, especially if you're in an area that's industrialized and you don't have a lot of trees. And then grants and sponsorship opportunities are popular as well. One of the ones that Beth is going to send out is with HEB. And HEB is, if you're in Texas, we love HEB. HEB has a lot of things that they offer, especially for environmental efforts and for community efforts. So that is a great resource right now. They're having, I guess, some kind of grant or sponsorship that they'll give you guys a little bit more information about that in the email. And that is a great area to look into. And also your local HEB, you can contact them as well, because they're more likely to help your local area, not just contacting a random HEB. So yeah, that's about it. I have all of my resources over here, and this is a giant resource page, so you guys are welcome to take a screenshot, but this is with Texas Children and Nature Network, a lot of their stuff. Then we have some more research studies that I was looking into about some of the stuff I talked about with biodiversity and children's health outcomes with exposure. And then I also added some of the guidance for guiding your choice on native plants and habitat guidance and just understanding, plant selection and safety resource like what we have at TCiNN where we have a safe plant list. So this is a great little resource that you could just go and take a photo and then click on the links whenever you want to get into a little bit more of actually getting into that planning and sourcing phases. And that is it, guys. So thank you so much. I hope you guys learned something. I really enjoyed studying and learning while I was doing this webinar as well. And I hope you guys feel a little bit more confident in planting native trees in your schoolyard and understanding why it's so important to be doing that as well. So thank you guys. If there's any questions, just let me know. I'm willing to answer any.
I have two questions.
Yes.
Would it be possible? I'm not sure how to screenshot on my laptop.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get that last slide emailed to us?
Yeah. No, definitely. I will send it to Beth afterwards so you guys can have it. I can tell you
Then
that.
Miss Beth, I noticed she had dropped some links in the chat, and one
Mhm.
of them was like an ID card.
Yes.
We do have a corner where I do have a garden, and as I was scrolling, I saw corn. We tried growing corn for like 3 or 4 years. This year we got pretty far, and we got the corn start to grow, and then something happened. One week, I guess I may have went on vacation or something. It was lacking. When I came back, I think it was disease, and so I was wondering. I know this is like nature and back, like outdoor spacing.
Yeah.
Will you guys have any trainings or be able to guide us if we're I'm not a green thumb. I've been trying to garden for about 7, 8 years since I've been in business almost. Trying to get our little garden going, and some years we get one or two things that we are able to harvest. This past year I did better. But I'm like, I think there's still something I'm not doing right. I'm not getting I don't have a lot of time. It's like, okay, we can plant the seeds and we can water, but I realized I was probably watering too late in the morning or too late in the afternoon, or so I
Yes.
kind of did that. But I'm like, I'm still not doing something right. Um,
Okay. Yes, we in fact on March 10th in the evening, we will be doing a TNA call with a local gardener nursery center. And so bring your questions to that TNA meeting, and we'll have an expert right there to answer them.
okay,
So, and then in the next 6 months, we'll be doing 6 of those TA calls, where it's not so much, there'll be a little bit of information given, but the rest of the time will be kind of podcast style and answering questions. So anything and everything that you have on gardening, you can bring to that one. If you have an immediate question, email it to me. And
okay,
I will, if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer or connect you to somebody who can help you.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I was like, oh, it's about time to start turning these beds maybe and prepping them. I was watching a
Eh,
video last night about getting your soil ready to put your plants in. And I was like, well, maybe I need to invite the critters, the good ones over.
Yes.
I'm like, because spring is in the air.
And that is, in fact, the gentleman that's doing the TA call on the 10th is, he's a soil expert.
Okay.
So he's really great about how to prep your garden, and get it ready because we are upon that first growing season. Like you can go ahead and start sowing seeds in mid-March
Yeah.
to harvest about June. Then we kind of die off in the summer, and then we can plant again September and harvest as late as November or December. Um, so whereas, we think gardening in the summer, Texas actually has two gardening times of the year, seasons.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
learned that because last year I think I planted some cabbage and lettuce seeds at the wrong time. And in winter we had cabbage. I was like, what? I forgot. And I thought nothing was coming. And I guess I got my zones mixed up or something when I planted the seeds. But yes. Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Emmy. I'm gonna shoot a survey here. Um, and then yeah, just as a reminder, if you do have questions or anything relating to the outdoor environment, that can be gardening, it can be design, it can be curriculum, planning, fundraising, that type of stuff. Just feel free to shoot me any questions that you have. And like I said, I'll be glad to help connect you to the right resource or if I have that information, I'm here to share it. That's what the EC network is all about.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention this, but I did want to add spring and winter are like your best times to plant. So whenever you're in the schools, like when you're in school in season, like that's a good time to plant. It's a good time to be thinking about these things too. So we're in a good planting season and we still have some time before summer. So
Yes, and often, like if you mentioned to HEB or you mentioned to one of the garden centers that you're a teacher, sometimes they'll donate or at least discount items for you. So that might be one way. And then if you're a Texas Rising Star Center, you might talk to your mentor about funding through Texas Rising Star on and see if you can get funding that's applicable to plants or trees. So it depends on the different boards, but they have done that before, given garden grants. And if you request it, they may they may make it a priority too. All righty. Any other questions today? Well, thank you so much, Emmy, for doing this for us. It was great. And thank you all for being here on your Saturday. And if you do need a certificate, just send me an email and I'll be glad to get that to you.
hey, thanks everyone. Enjoy your Saturday.
You too. And I will send that follow-up email with the resources to you sometime in the next couple days. Yeah. All righty. Thanks, everybody. Let me
Bye.
stop my recording real quick. There we go.